This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everybody, and happy Earth Day. I'm calling this meeting of the Connecticut Green Bank Board of Directors to order on, Friday, April 22nd, 2022, and I have 9:03 a.m. Greetings. I think the first item of business is public comments. Do we have any public comments? Okay, hearing none. Moving on to the consent agenda, and I think there are 4 items on the consent agenda, beginning with the minutes. Brian, did we want to discuss some of these items? Some of them we visited many times.
Yeah, at a high level, I think everyone's comfortable with these items. Pretty standard stuff. The meeting minutes from the last meeting, the report outs on the transactions approved by the staff that are consistent with the comprehensive plan and budget. You know, transactions less than 500,000, no more in aggregate than $1 million. We had 3 CPACE transactions totaling about $500,000. And then 2 extensions, a CPACE project in Hartford, and then our Groton subbase project to the end of the fiscal year, this fiscal year. And then we included the progress to targets for our programs, which our directors will work through as part of the agenda. So resolutions 1 through 4 are part of the consent agenda.
Great. Does anyone have any questions about either the minutes or any of the items on the consent agenda?
Lonnie, I'll abstain just because I've abstained on the Groton subbase matters in the past, just so you know.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
This is Brenda, I second.
Great. Thank you. So no questions or any continuing observations about this? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? And Matt is abstaining, correct?
Correct, abstain.
Okay, and 1 abstention. Okay, moving on. So we're moving on to this item, and again, something that we've been really keeping an eye on and working with, and we're very excited about this partnering of Posigen and Generac. I think it's Bert who's going to mostly walk us through this.
That's right. I'll be doing this exclusively.
Okay.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Madam Chair. This is to walk you through the proposal for a facility for Posigen to help support their strategic partnership with Generac, which is in formation at this time. They're moving through the initial phases of documentation on that. But as you can see at the top of the slide here, this is a street in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where a number of homes right in a row. This is a familiar picture for you, I think. Had solar put on them a few years ago, and this is one of those pictures that just warms my heart to show that, you know, across the board, solar is desired by all. And this has been one of the initiatives of the Green Bank to make sure that we reach solar parity. We're a solar parity state. And what we want to, we'll talk about how we want to become a solar plus storage parity state, so we can make sure that all families in Connecticut, if they want to avail themselves of resiliency benefits, are able to achieve that at a very low cost. So let's go to the next slide, please. Just by way of a recap, the Green Bank, together with the utilities, are administering the Energy Storage Solutions Program. This is a 9-year program with an overall goal between residential and C&I installations, bringing forward 580 megawatts into Connecticut. There's also a statewide goal of 1 gigawatt, which includes front of the meter installations. I think you've heard in the past, I think at the last meeting, Sergio Carrillo mentioned that the C&I bucket for 20 to 24 has been fully subscribed with applications. They're still taking applications. Not all of those applications will necessarily come to fruition because of interconnection issues. But the residential bucket is far from being fully subscribed, and so the applications are coming in by the week. Next slide, please. These are some of the goals that Pura set forth in the docket. First is cost effectiveness, to make sure that there's a net benefit to all electric customers. This is a requirement that we test this periodically and demonstrate that. Of course, there's a resilience benefit that we want to achieve, as well as economic development. But what we're focusing in on here is goal 3, which is to serve vulnerable communities, and that is to deploy no less than 40% of residential installations in vulnerable communities, which would include low-income, distressed, and affordable housing. So that's the goal here, and that's actually the focus of the joint venture between Posigen and Generac. Next slide, please. One of the benefits of an investment in those target areas is that there is an enhanced incentive for batteries, for battery storage, which you see here, whether it's in underserved or low income. So this actually helps in terms of the economic returns to the third-party owners, which in this case would be Posigen. Generac is going to be supplying the equipment. Next slide, please. So here are the key aspects of the strategic partnership that has been that's been arranged. Posigen is going to target primarily and initially its existing customers that it brought in under the RSIP. So clearly, the benefit will be to go after those, particularly the low and moderate income customers there, to try to seek out that higher incentive benefit. So there are particular tests that will have to achieve to get that particular incentive. They're targeting using the 18 kilowatt hour battery. It's called the Power Cell from Generac, and Posigen would pay for the purchase, installation, and maintenance of the battery, which would be backed up by the Generac warranty service. Just to tell you a little bit about Generac, they're a multi-billion-dollar revenue per year operation with a cash flow in the vicinity of about $750 million annually. They have approximately, they're known primarily for their backup generation power plants on a residential as well as commercial and industrial scale. They have about a 75 to 80% market share of residential backup systems across the United States, which is quite impressive. And what that also gives them through their established dealer and operating network are the boots on the ground that is necessary to maintain these systems once they're installed. So the idea with Posigen is they plan to have it so the customer pays nothing up front. That's the model in any case, but with either a small increase or even no increase in payment. that really depends on how the numbers will shake out with the incentive, and there could be various incentive levels, as I showed you on the slide a couple slides ago. So there are a combination of incentives. There's the upfront incentive, and then there is the federal income tax credit, which applies when solar PV is already installed at the site. And then you have ongoing incentive payments for passive and active dispatch activities with the utilities. So the important part of this relationship with Generac is because those passive and active dispatch incentives rely on the batteries being available. Generac will guarantee that that availability is actually met under the program for the life of the program on a battery by battery basis. Next slide, please. So we've divided this. We're bringing this under our Capital Solutions Open RFP program. Posigen approached us on this, and what we've structured with them is an overall $8 million facility divided between a working capital line and a term loan line. The working capital line is going to be a $2 million facility, which would allow Posigen to purchase up to 150 systems at a time. That fits with their planned rollout strategy across the state. It will be at an interest rate of 2%. It would allow for a 2-year draw period, but it must convert, all draws must convert to term within a 180-day period, or it would have to be, those advances would have to be repaid to the extent they are not converted at the end of that 180-day period. Next slide, please. And speaking of the term loan facility, it's $6 million in size, which is designed to cover about 1,000 installations over a 2-year period. Yeah, our hope, quite frankly, would be for this to grow over time, depending upon the success of the program. And what we're going to be in a first lien senior position, which is a very similar structure to our performance-based incentive line of credit that we have outstanding with Posigen at the current time. That facility was structured to be up to $10 million in size. It now has an outstanding balance. It's fully drawn, but it now is in full repayment mode. So we're down to $8.8 million, and it's amortizing quarterly as the PBI cash flows come in. This is being structured in the same way, and would be repaying over time as the performance incentives come in under the program. So it's going to be sized specifically to those revenues that will come in, just in a similar fashion that we have sized the PBI line of credit to the expected cash flows over the 5 to 6 year period of the performance-based incentive. So this is going to be structured to track those anticipated receipts over the next 10 years under the active and passive dispatch performance payments that are going to be coming in from the utilities. So we're really, since that is going to be guaranteed by, the performance of that is going to be guaranteed by Generac, we look at this as being a very secure relationship. And as far as the interest rate is concerned, we are going to incentivize them on the LMI side with a 4% interest rate, which they can use up to $6 million. And if it doesn't fall into that LMI bucket, which is, if you think about the RSIP, anything that came in under the RSIP that qualified for the incentive, the higher PBI incentive under the RSIP, would qualify for that 4% rate. So we're going to use that simple designation under our facility to qualify it in. Now, under the non-LMI, we would limit that to $2.4 million at a maximum, but those draws would be at a 5% interest rate on a term basis. And just note at the bottom here that they are we have a 7-year history with Posigen in terms of having credit facilities with them. We're currently down to 1.8 million on the second lien credit facility. That's with Congressional Bank, where we are in the subordinated position there, and the first lien position, as I said, under the PBI facility. Next slide, please. So that brings us to the resolutions, and I'm happy to entertain any questions on this, but we're really thrilled that really the Green Bank brought this concept to both Generac and Posigen. This was an outgrowth of our outreach to the various OEMs in the storage side of the market. Mackie Dykes, myself, Louise Della Pesca, we were having a conversation with Generac, and one of the things that they were saying is that they needed help was not on the capital side per se, but really on the deployment side, that they were having difficulties trying to figure out how to strategize getting to the LMI market, which, because of their ESG goals and their overall goals as a corporation, they really wanted to devote a lot of their deployment to that segment of the market. And they did not have a lot of experience and exposure there, but they wanted to do that in Connecticut. So we said, well, we have a partner in Posigen who has done a very good job in partnership with us in deploying to that marketplace. So why don't we introduce the two of you and suggest that you have a deeper conversation about how you could work together. And so that's really the backstory about how this came about, playing matchmaker here, and this came together in a matter of about 8 weeks. So it's really good to see this move along. So with that, I will turn it back to you, Madam Chair, and you can field questions and direct them to me.
Absolutely. Does anybody have any questions or observations? I mean, I think this is really, it's marvelous. And I guess Generac really didn't have any kind of position in the LMI community. I mean, they had no percentages at all. So this is really going to help us get a lot accomplished. Any questions for Bert?
I do have a few questions. Oh, go ahead.
Who's that, Vicky?
I do have some questions. I think somebody else was also.
Okay, who else?
John Harity, but I'll wait.
Hey, John.
I'll wait, Matt.
And Matt?
Yep. Go ahead, Vicky.
Okay.
Bonnie, I've got questions too.
Okay. So
great. I'll just jump in.
Let's start with Vicky. I heard her voice first, so.
Thanks. So is there a percentage focus that you're thinking about for multi-unit dwellings, or are you focusing on single family for now?
The focus here at this point in time under this particular arrangement is single family, because that is that's the focus of Posigen and their existing deployments. That's not to say that it couldn't be expanded to include multifamily, but at the current time that's the focus here right now.
And we're still working on the Pure is still working on the tariff for excuse me, for larger MUDs, but I guess, I just wanted to flag that I think it would be good to consider when we do get there how we would approach that. And then from sort of, I'd like to understand what the market impacts of this would be. So what percentage would you say of the homes that we expect to be served by the whole program would this relationship, serve?
So Posigen has, I think, approaching 5,000 systems in the state, somewhere between 4,500 and 5,000. This is geared to supply 2,000 systems over a 2-year period. So somewhere between 40 and 50% of their existing customer base. And I would imagine that there would be some installations that would be done on a new customer basis, but because of the way the utilities have specified the wiring diagrams under the buy all sell all arrangement, which does not allow for the which then requires that the batteries be charged by the grid as opposed to the solar system, and actually provides no resiliency benefit to the individual homeowner because of the structure of the wiring of the battery and the system arrangement. Those installations would be under the netting tariff, which is a different economic proposition. So that's probably going to be just a more gradual uptick in terms of deployment, Commissioner.
Okay. Thank you. So what about other providers that are interested in partnering and deploying solar and storage together, and perhaps along with EV charging and heat pumps and so forth? Do you anticipate sort of growing this opportunity or opening this opportunity to others? I'm just wondering about the impact it'll have on people who are looking to sort of launch in this area who aren't part of the agreement.
One of the benefits of our Capital Solutions Open RFP program is that this is open to all comers. So we're happy to entertain other arrangements for people to come into the market and approach us. And in fact, we've been proactively reaching out, as I mentioned in my remarks, to other OEMs, and but thus far, this is the only one that has evolved out of that.
Okay. And then just a couple more things, sorry. But thinking about, as we move forward toward whole building electrification, with the benefits of rooftop solar to pay for heating and vehicle fueling, when you go back to customers who had previously participated to see if they want to participate in the storage program, is it possible to also check into adding to the system size to account for the potential future for electrification, so that their solar is also paying for their heat and someday their vehicle fuel? Because I know that's something that PURA has since sort of allowed, right, for solar installations to be oversized to account for future electrification. So I'm just wondering, when we go back to customers for that next touch on storage, if we can, check in with them on that as well.
Oh, sure. I would just say this about that, Commissioner. What I think we should do is we should maybe sit down with your team and talk through about some of the opportunities, particularly that we want to promote as a state. There's the overall opportunity, and then there's a sales process. Sometimes that sales process, depending upon how it's managed, can become overwhelming for the customer, and but the benefits here, for example, with battery storage, is these units are perfectly modular. You can add on to them. I think what you're getting to perhaps is maybe I'm misunderstanding, but I think you're talking about maybe new customers and in terms of electrification and kind of sizing it up at the time, or are you talking about the existing customer base and maybe?
No, I am talking about the existing and adding. I mean, it's an opportunity for going back to the home to also tell them that things have changed and that they can resize their system to accommodate their heating and transportation load as well. I mean, it's an opportunity, right, for them to benefit from resilience for their heating system and for their any future car charging needs. So yeah, I
Right.
am talking about existing homes.
Well, so as far as the existing, we need to sit down with Sergio Carrillo's group, yourselves, and maybe a couple of others, because you have the existing system touching the meter under the RSIP program, and now we're in the the buy all sell all or netting tariff, right? For maybe for incremental additions to the solar. So I think we'd have to talk through that. I do know that when Pura set up under the new tariffs that you can oversize to meet anticipated demand, but I'm just not so sure because I'm just not as familiar with the integration of those two programs as to what's possible and how that would work. So I think we'd have to just sit down and kind of walk through that. Frank,
I would love to do that. Yeah.
If you're familiar with what I'm talking about in terms of the integration of those two, the RSIP versus the netting and the buy all sell all.
That would be great. We would really appreciate having, and I do understand, they'd be coming out of a different sort of financial mechanism. So we would have to think about how that could work. But as we're going back to homes, I just don't want to miss opportunities to future proof. So
I totally agree with you, and I think that there's I will actually speak to Posigen and mention this point. They also, I mean, being marketers as they are, they don't want to miss an opportunity to try to expand the relationship with their customers. So it's a point well made. Now I'll speak to them about it, and then I think we'll need to talk about the tariff issue that I mentioned.
That's great. Thanks. And then just one more question. Why so I understand that we would want to, that Posigen would want to limit the risk, but can you tell me how you balance the risks in a program that, my understanding is like a pay for performance program, why we would guarantee payment regardless of performance?
Why we would guarantee payment? Well, what's happening is Generac is guaranteeing that the battery will meet the performance requirements to entitle Posigen to a payment under the performance incentive program. So if the failure of the battery creates a less than full payment or even no payment, then that's where the Generac make whole comes in, so that we're then assured of a revenue stream over the 10 years, which we're looking to for repayment under this program.
So it's the battery performance and not necessarily customer behavior that's focused on.
Correct. Yeah. So the way the performance incentive works is the battery has to be available and ready, and via telematics, the utility can tell which batteries are available and accessible to provide the benefit, the grid balancing benefits that they're looking for under the battery storage, the energy storage solutions program. So if they detect that a battery in a particular home is not available, then there's been some failure on the part of the battery. But they won't compensate that home or that arrangement at that home for under the incentive program. And let's recall that the incentive program, because of what the Green Bank had made commentary in the docket at PURA, is that we said we want to make sure that those incentives are assignable, just like the ZREC payments are assignable to financing counterparties. So we're actually getting that stream. That stream is going from the utilities to the SPV of Posigen, and that's where we're getting our payment from. So it's, if that payment stream is interrupted because of battery failure, what's going to happen is Generac is going to then pay to the SPV instead of the utility paying to the SPV. So that's the arrangement that's been designed here.
Okay, I think I understand. And I should know the answer to this, so forgive me for not knowing the answer, but there's no way for the customer to override the availability of the battery? It would just be a battery failure that would cause that?
Well, I guess you could have malicious interference, but I would imagine that would be quite rare. But I suppose it could happen. But I would think that, yeah, these systems are able to be remotely monitored by Posigen, by Generac, and separately by the utilities. Now, so we would look to, or Generac would be looking to make sure that these systems are always up. If they're not up, then they're going to be reaching out to the customer, probably at a first instance, to say, is something happening at your home that's causing the system to be offline? Is there something we don't know about? If they can't solve it by telephone or by internet connection, then they would roll a truck out to that location. And as I mentioned, they have a very extensive dealer network throughout Connecticut and throughout the United States. So that's one of the benefits that they have of being able to have their boots on the ground to be able to get to these battery systems.
Okay, I think that answers my questions. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Bert.
Thank you. Bert, it's Lonnie. I just quickly want to say I personally am so grateful that we are vetting companies and coming up with these kinds of partnerships with companies with track records. I get several calls a week from people. There's a whole world of hustlers out here selling a whole bunch of, pretend relationships, a lot of them running around with LLCs, and everybody is confused. So the idea that, we're actually doing some critical due diligence and vetting these folks as, as these opportunities become available is really important. I think Matt Ranelli had a question. Matt?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, great job. I agree. It's one of those examples where putting people together doesn't cost us anything and comes up with a great result. For just one clarification in the memo, the draw period, it says that it can be extended by Posigen in the Green Bank's discretion. I assume that means if Posigen asks, but we still have the final say about extending the draw period.
That's correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
And
John Harity, you had something?
And I would.
Oh, go ahead, Bert.
Just to cap that off, we would come back to the board to actually come for approval to extend out. So we would have to Posigen would come to us, we would say okay, but all of that would be subject to board approval, because if you think about it, the board is approving this for a 2-year period and then a follow-on 6-year period. So it stands to reason that we're not going to extend past these period dates, 6 + 2 or 8, without coming back to the board, because the implication of extending the availability period would then extend the term period. So we would logically come back to the board to seek approval, but So I just want to make that clear.
Yeah,
I don't think that was made clear in the memo, but I want to make that clear here.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And it will be collateralized the whole time by whatever inventory they have on hand.
Exactly.
Good. Now, John Harity, you had a question?
In the interest of time, I will send Bert or Brian an email, and I just have a quick question that I can be asked offline. Thanks.
Okay. And Dominic, did you have a question?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So I thought I heard somebody else's voice saying they
I
wanted.
had one, and mine will be quick. Mine is just
Okay.
more of a nuts and bolts one. Just want to make sure, I know some of this was answered before. Want to make sure that, these two companies have all their proper registrations in the state. They're up to date on their tax filings here. No labor issues, no outstanding lawsuits. Just want to make sure that there's nothing there that would potentially, embarrass the administration.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be a condition precedent to all draws, that they would have to represent and warrant to good performance and all of those things. And I see our general counsel Brian Farnan on the line, so I'm sure he'll take note of this and ensure that that's incorporated in our documentation, which is pretty simple.
That'll be one of my comments generally on things, just to make sure that we're kind of on top of all those things. And I know you guys are. I just want to kind of document it.
Fair point.
And especially with our kind of discussion regarding atypical industries, and that's kind of led into kind of a greater overall focus on all lenders and borrower relationships as it relates to things like litigation issues and things like that. So we have a added focus on that right now too.
Excellent. I appreciate it.
Okay. So hearing no more questions, do we hear a motion to approve resolution number 5?
So moved, John Harity.
Second, Matt. Second, Matt.
Second. Good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
This is Brenda. I'll abstain.
Okay, who is that? Say again.
Brenda?
Oh, Brenda. Okay. Hey, Brenda.
Hi.
Okay, Brenda's abstaining. All right.
Okay,
All right.
moving on to our next. This next transaction is and for an energy efficiency as a service provider, a homegrown company named Butterfly, and with 2 D's instead of butterfly, that flies around. So assisting me with this presentation will be Desiree Miller. I see she has come on the screen there, and we're really excited about this company, which not only is our first at scale energy as a service, energy efficiency as a service kind of arrangement. We've done these things on a one-off basis in the past, but we have to date not been able to crack the nut in terms of small business energy efficiency as a service type of deployment, and particularly in the quick serve restaurant franchise operations, which proliferate around the state. And there are small businesses that we haven't been able to reach. So this company has come up with a model that Desiree will walk us through, and then we'll pick up on the financial proposal after Desiree finishes with her part of the presentation. So Desiree, I'll switch it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Bert. So Butterfly's business exists to serve a need we all know too well. U.S. businesses have outdated and energy-intensive equipment, and they're on average consuming 30% more energy than necessary. Technologies such as efficient lighting, efficient HVAC switches, they all have positive ROIs, but they haven't been universally adopted. Next slide, please. So why are inefficient energy practices so pervasive across the US? It really comes down to three core issues. First of all, business owners don't always know how inefficient their equipment is compared to best-in-class technology. They don't know how big the savings can be. Second of all, they don't have the in-house expertise to identify the inefficiencies and then go ahead and implement the solutions. They're focusing on their actual business. And then third of all, they are afraid of risking their own capital in case the planned savings don't pan out. Next slide, please. So Butterfly provides an extremely compelling service to its customers. It identifies the customer's energy inefficiencies, implements the solutions, and fronts all the capital. It's completely free to the customer. Butterfly's customers bear no performance risk that a certain upgrade will not deliver the expected energy savings. And rather being paid directly by the customers, Butterfly shares in the savings shares in the customer savings. Next slide, please. So let's dive into Butterfly's energy as a service model. In addition to choosing, purchasing, and installing the upgrades, Butterfly installs meters at the customer's site to monitor their energy usage. What's especially unique about Butterfly's business model is that Butterfly takes over the utility bill and becomes the customer of record. So customer is no longer paying their bill to their local utility. Butterfly is paying it for their 10-year contract term. So Butterfly is paying a utility bill based on the customer's actual energy usage, which if everything has gone according to plan, should be about 30% lower than pre all the retrofits. And then Butterfly bills the customers on a monthly basis using a predetermined baseline level of energy, which represents like a 5 to 10% savings compared to the pre-relationship level of energy bill. And Butterfly profits by capturing that spread between actual energy reduction and the predetermined customer baseline. Next slide, please. So Butterfly is a Connecticut company with its corporate offices in Shelton. It was founded back in 2017 by Al Sablowy. To reiterate its business model, it takes energy efficiency decisions and costs out of the customer's hands and shares in the savings. Its customer base this is pretty interesting, is heavily focused on restaurant franchises, and this has been a real sweet spot for Butterfly. If you go ahead and step into a Subway anywhere in the country, it's going to look very similar to every other Subway you've walked into. The equipment is going to be the same, the operations are going to be run similarly, and the franchise owners are also a community. They go to the same annual conference, they all work under the same corporate franchisor, they know each other. So targeting restaurant franchises has allowed Butterfly to both streamline the energy efficiency retrofits and the sales and marketing by tapping into that franchise network. Down on the energy impact row, Butterfly is having a very sizable impact on energy reductions. In 2022, it's anticipating reducing energy usage in Connecticut by 5,800 megawatt hours and nationwide 52,000 megawatt hours. It's been a real leader in job creation, already created 76 well-paying jobs in Connecticut, and if it can reach the magical number of 259, one of its DECD loans will be forgiven. So it's very much incentivized to keep its corporate business in the state. To date, about 15% of its energy efficiency investments have been inside Connecticut, to the tune of about $4 million invested in energy efficiency in Connecticut. And on the financial side, it's currently EBITDA negative, being that it's in its serious growth mode. But it's expecting to move into the black as early as 2024 and is really expecting pretty phenomenal growth thereafter. Next slide, please. So Butterfly isn't just an installer, it's a large collector of energy consumption data. It monitors its customers' energy habits carefully and is quick to respond when equipment isn't performing as it should be. And understanding that its equipment's real-world performance is helping it continuously improve with future installs. And in the near future, it's also hoping to monetize this data as it's useful for across the business. This next slide is a schematic of Butterfly's flow of capital and services. Let's just go ahead and start at the bottom left corner. Butterfly deploys energy efficiency improvements to its customers, as we've discussed at length, and bills them using a predetermined baseline level of energy. Let's move clockwise. Butterfly pays the utility for the customer's actual energy usage, which, as they target, should be about 30% below the pre-relationship. Most of these installs are being carried out by a network of nationwide contractors. And as it's in very fast growth mode, Butterfly is largely funded by debt, which Bert will now discuss in greater detail.
Yeah, so the actually let's go back to the previous slide just so we can summarize that. So the current debt holders in the arrangement are Balance Point Capital, a private equity firm based in Connecticut, and Mizzen Capital, which is a woman-owned Small Business Investment Corporation, led by one of its co-founders, Liddy Carter, who was previously with Enhanced Capital, and I think is known to a number, maybe to a number of you. Certainly, she's known to us as well as through Enhanced and also through Mizzen. In terms of investors, we've got let's go to the next page just quickly. In terms of the investors, we've got Edison Ventures as well as Balance Point on the investment side, and they're in there to the tune of 60%. And you've got Mr. Sablowy himself, who's put more than 30% of the capital up. There's actually a conversion of this. They went from an LLC to a corporation, and as part of all of that and horse trading with shares and everything else, it doesn't foot to what you would see in the audited report. So there's some adjustments that were made, but in terms of cash actually put into the enterprise over time, this $41 million figure is accurate. So if we could back up one slide, please, back to, yeah. So I just wanted to give you a sense of, so Balance Point is not only an investor on the equity side, they're also a debt provider. And Mizzen, as I said, has stepped up. They're in for $5 million of debt. Balance Point's facility is about $40 million. DECD has their job-oriented and facility, which is tied to the job goals that Desiree spoke to earlier. Currently about $1.3 million outstanding. They can tap an additional $1.5 million, but they have not asked for that, and that would also be linked to the attainment of certain job goals. They're current on all of their facilities that are cited here. Connecticut Innovations also has a $2 million venture debt facility outstanding to Butterfly, and we're bringing forward this $5 million facility. So next slide, please. The sizing of the facility that we're bringing forward is based on the fact that based on their revenues to be derived over time from the Connecticut projects on a discounted value basis is about $6 million. So we've sized ours at $5 million. This is in line with the approach that we used with Posigen, which is actually our collateral is spread over many states that Posigen has deployed capital to. This is the same kind of relationship here with Butterfly throughout various states. We've just represented here the 8 states that account for 50% of Butterfly's volume, with 26% of that volume coming from the nearby tri-state area, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, and and nearby Massachusetts and Rhode Island. Next slide, please. This is the management. Desiree spoke to about Alice Abloy, who's an entrepreneur, has been involved in a couple of data management, expense management, and now energy management ventures. These are the other people who have worked with him over the years who have come into this new venture with him. Tom Flynn, a 22-year veteran with Shipman and Goodwin, is his general counsel. Peter Dacey, who's experienced in other listed companies as a CFO, and Chris Benedictus is their VP of technology and has been with Al for 15 years or so. Next slide. I have to refer you, because of the confidential nature of the financial statements, I cannot present them. This is a televised session, so due to the confidential nature, I have to refer you to pages, I think it's 12, 13, and 14 in the presentation handout, where you can see the numbers there. But we're satisfied that the company has not only access to investment capital. We've spoken to a number of the investors, including CI and Mizzen and DECD. All of them are satisfied, very satisfied with the management, the prospects for the company. The company is actually has under retainer Guggenheim Partners, who is in the market with their next series of investor equity, which has attracted a number of proposals as we speak. So they're very confident about being able to raise those funds, and we're confident about the future prospects for the company. Next slide, please. You'll see in the package a forecasted P&L for the company, which shows that they're getting to break even starting in 2023 on a partial year basis and on a full year basis in 2024. Next slide, please. And here's the structure of the facility that we've designed. This would be on a level on a liquidation preference basis with Mizzen Capital, Connecticut Innovations. So we would be at the junior level along with those lenders underneath Balance Point Capital and the DECD notes. The structure of the deal is an interest rate which is sliding between 9 and 11%, depending on how much is drawn in the first 6 months. As the company expects to draw most of this within the first 6 months, we expect the interest rate that would apply would be 9%. There's a facility fee of from 0 to 3.5%. That's depending upon the draw in the first year. If for whatever reason they don't use the facility, then the 3.5% facility fee would apply. That we're not engaging in this activity for nothing. In terms of the payment of interest, the cash amount that would have to be paid in the first year is 5.5%. The balance, which would be 3.5%, would be deferred and capitalized into the term repayment period, which would commence in the 13th month of the facility, so sometime in mid 2023. In addition to the debt returns, we've negotiated for 10% of the value of the facility, or $500,000 worth, to be exercisable by us in terms of common stock with a strike price of $2.50, and at valuations that we've assessed based on where the company is drawing attention these days, that that upside could be substantial. So, but that's just on the come, and is not a particular reason to do the deal, but it's just a side benefit of doing the deal. Next slide, please. That brings us to the resolutions, as well as the open it to the floor for questions. So back to you, Madam Chair, and why don't we back it up to the previous slide so we can focus on the terms in case anybody wants to ask questions.
This is Lonnie, just clarify. Are Tom Flynn and the general counsel of Butterfly are two different individuals?
And are not related.
I mean, that's good for us.
Yes, or for me.
Are there any questions?
I just have a comment, John Harity, which is the Green Bank and Bert and the whole team just continue to find ways to get the private market work towards the public good. And it's just remarkable. And I congratulate them on this.
Well, thank you, John, for saying that. I do want to say that this is, we've actually been talking to the company for 3 years. And when Al Sablowy and Matt Nemerson, who is a former, I think he was the economic development person in New Haven, I believe.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
New Haven.
Yeah, they came into our offices about 3 years ago, met with me and Brian Garcia, and I, at that time, I was hearing the story, and I laid out to them that I'd say, well, look, I think that what I'm seeing here is your business is really divided into 3 pieces. You know, you've got a pre-development piece, a prospecting and pre-development piece, R&D, how this stuff works. They have a number of devices that are actually under patent. So, you know, so there's been a lot of R&D that has gone into this enterprise. So it's not just using other people's equipment. They've actually had to design things to actually fit the needs of these franchise operators, so that as they have learned more about these franchise operations, they've actually developed stuff. So they go in and they do one or two franchise operations, and then they copy exact as they do it. Instead of rinse and repeat, it's copy exact, as Desiree mentioned. You know, a number of these floor plans, and in particular, the equipment in each of these franchise setups is exactly the same. So they have the benefit of being able to scale whatever improvement they do from the first 1, 2, 3, or 4 that they do under the prospecting end into then a small pilot where they'll do anywhere from 10 to 15. And then once they get additional data there, then they're able to go back to the franchise headquarters and explain how much benefit that based on these pilots, they're able to save their franchise operators. So it is that 3-phase process. And what I emphasized to them was that much in the same way that we have been able to securitize the PosiGen contracts that last for 20 years under a solar arrangement, and much in the same way that we've been able to securitize the small business energy advantage contracts, which are a much shorter period, 4 years. You know, we're confident that as these contracts season and settle out within the first year of operation, that leaves a 9-year period of cash flow, because these are 10-year contracts minimum that they put on. The contract term is an established 10-year period. And so once these contracts season, then that is prime securitization material for a traditional bank receivables facility that we could then work to put together for them, just as we did for PosiGen, and just as we did for Eversource with their Small Business Energy Advantage program. The benefit of that is that then brings their cost of capital down from 10 to 15% down to closer to 5% or 6%, you know, given the recent increases in interest rates. But That's a substantial decline in the cost of capital. That then allows the company to scale even more and to be able to deliver those savings to these franchise operators that they wouldn't be able to do at scale if they had to keep acquiring capital at between 10 and 15%. So that is the ultimate goal here, and which is why we're kind of starting with this particular step. So the idea is, frankly, although it is designed to repay over the 6-year period, the vision that we have for the company is that between now and the next 18 months, we'll actually convert this entire contractual structure to a securitization with a commercial bank at between 5 and 6%, with Green Bank participation in that facility. And we've already spoken with one of the other lenders to Butterfly, and they're quite interested in this arrangement. So that's the vision here, John, that we're bringing forward. So it's one of the reasons we're excited, not only about the scale opportunity here and the impact that they're having, but the fact that we can then bring this financial innovation to them.
Well, it's very cool, and I think the resolution should say, and do you want fries with that?
Hey, it's Tom Flynn. I have it's the Green Bank's Tom Flynn, not the company's Tom Flynn. I've got a couple of questions.
Ahead,
Thanks.
Tom.
Thanks. Bert, it's got us listed as junior debt here. Talk to me about the difference between the senior and junior debt, just so that I'm clear, because I don't have the agreements in front of me, so I just want to know the difference.
Okay, so in terms of the difference is that as you would imagine in a typical arrangement, it's the same collateral. So there's a blanket lien across all the assets of the enterprise. To the benefit of the lenders. But in a liquidation preference, it's going to go first to Balance Point and DECD, and with any residual in that liquidation preference going to Mizzen, CI, and Green Bank.
So when and what confused me a little bit here was the pari passu is between the junior debt holders. Is that correct?
That's correct. Sorry for any confusion there.
Yeah, because I didn't know when it said that. I didn't know whether you meant pari passu with the senior, which is why I was asking about the difference there. Next question I would have is, why are we going in at essentially 2.5 times Connecticut Innovations?
The only thing I can say is that we're going in based on our sizing of the Connecticut part of the collateral, and we're comfortable with that. Connecticut Innovations, this is in their venture debt program. They may expand it. When I spoke to Katie Drakonakis, he said that they were happy to see us in the facility, and that at some point they may add more to their facility as well. But they specifically asked us if we would be interested in doing any more beyond the 5, and I said, we'll look at that on a facts and circumstances basis, but we'd be happy to talk to them about that.
Thank you. The next question I have is related to, very specifically, you talk about getting into the restaurant sector here, that franchise sector, which when I go to their website, they serve several different sectors. Talk to me about any risk we have because it's in the restaurant sector versus those other sectors.
Well, I had an interesting conversation about this very topic with Mizzen. And the risks of being in the restaurant sector is really, I think, as you can imagine, franchise failure. As well as we saw that there were some concerns through COVID. I think that in terms of the latter, I think we've seen that these quick serve restaurants have adapted to COVID quite well. In fact, if there's anything to be that's beneficial about their operations, it's about purchase and carry out, as opposed to, although they do have seating inside, you don't have to stay inside. You can just purchase it and take it away. So that's been beneficial. And you just look at the numbers for Chipotle, for example, which have just been astronomical throughout COVID. So so I think that there's the quick serve restaurant sector has adopted to COVID. As far as
I would agree with that, but I think the sector as a whole still has an inordinate amount of financial difficulties and failures just as a sector. So even though the sector itself has quote unquote stabilized during COVID and the like, it's still a riskier segment of the economy, is it not?
Yes, and I was getting to that.
Yeah.
And so as far as that's concerned, I think what we have working for us in this particular time that we're coming in, is that now that they have at the present time 2,800 approaching 3,000 contracts, you now have a lot of diversity in terms of credit risk amongst many more franchisees. And the way they collect is 65% is coming through an ACH pull, and their collection rate is about 92% within 21 days, of invoice. So they have an exceptional collection record. So they've proven that they've been picking actually really good and successful franchisees. And so all I can say is they're so far they're doing a really good job of picking the people who are actually paying on time, and so it's working out very well for them. But
yeah,
I think
that's no guarantee moving.
Large numbers.
Yeah, that's no guarantee going forward because I'm looking at their growth projections, at least in their statements, and they're going to have to get aggressive in some of their growth. So I don't know what they're going to do to take on new business. If I can sum this up, what I'm looking at is this is a company that has negative EBITDA right now. They're still in growth mode. They're still in fundraising mode. And the investment itself is in a sector that is a riskier than not sector in the food industry, right? In this franchise industry. That's and we're junior debt versus senior debt, so we're behind about $45 million worth of debt outstanding in this arrangement. I'm not trying to yuck on anybody's yums here. I'm just trying to make sure I'm putting the perspective in, because this is a riskier investment, for lack of a better word, for us.
Yes,
based on
that's
this deal.
Totally. And as we view it, Tom, this is I would say that this is the probably the riskiest transaction that we've done in terms of
Right.
on par perhaps with Posigen when we stepped into the second lien position some 7 years ago with them. But we saw the growth prospects, we saw the value of good management as well as a good operation. And so we think that we're looking at this in much the same way in terms of their ability to deliver impact as well, to Connecticut as well as beyond. And we think that the risk in terms of our balance sheet of investments, we've got about $200 million of investments outstanding. This is 2.5% on a fully drawn basis. So we think that the risks are contained.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying. I do want to compliment you on the creativity of this and actually trying to work on creative solutions and putting money to work to help the energy sector. Me personally, this is just based on the face of the information that I've had. This is a little too risky for my blood on this one. I just want to state that based on what I've heard. But I'm please don't take that as against the team or anything. I understand all the hard work and the creativity that went into this.
Understood.
So,
Thank you, Tom, for the comments.
yeah, no, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Al Stablowy is a serial entrepreneur, right? He's had many successful ventures
Yeah,
in
this
his
is
past.
his last venture was a company called Tango, which was managed corporate communications expenses, multi-billion dollars in expenses. It sold in 2017 for $256 million to a private equity firm that was actually a partial owner of the enterprise at the time. It was previously publicly listed on the NASDAQ, and it was taken private in 2017.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions or comments or observations?
Yeah, this is Dominic. I just had another question and might not be able to get into this completely, but just kind of piggybacking off of Tom's points. I don't know if you could speak maybe to Butterfly's kind of positioning in the market. I know there's other folks who are doing similar kind of energy efficiency work with similar customers and how they're viewing their kind of competitive position as they're looking to grow aggressively. I know they're working in a lot of other sectors as well. Maybe you could just kind of speak to how they're positioned relative to some other people in the space and meeting those growth projections.
So sure, and thanks for the question. I think that what Desiree said is really on point here. There are a couple of things. One is the ability to there are energy as a service companies, but that are competing with them. Not the bigger ones, however, are not in this particular sector as far as our diligence has been able to discern, meaning that they are more focused on larger corporate and commercial real estate opportunities, and so those are not the copy exact type of relationships that we have here. The second thing that I would say is that there's a lot of IP that has been developed in terms of not only the particular device, some of the devices they've been able to invent and patent for these quick serve restaurants, but also the data analytics and interface that they have. And so much of the success here is the ability of these operators under these franchise operations to clearly understand what is happening in their energy picture. As Desiree explained, a lot of these operators don't even know that something's going wrong in their restaurant. Butterfly actually knows because of all the sensors that they put in. They actually know ahead of time, ahead of the management of the franchise themselves knowing that they've got a fault in a freezer, or that or the lights are been left on overnight by some mistake or whatever, or there's a compressor that's gone wrong on a rooftop unit. So all of these factors are things that I'm sorry, can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, all right. My screen kind of blipped for a moment. Just Garcia, I can see you. So unless you freeze up, you wave your hands if you can't hear me. So all of these factors kind of contribute to the unique position that Butterfly is in, and they have already executed on more than half of the top 25 franchises in the United States. So once they are in, that's called landing customers or landing franchise. And now they're very much into the expand phase of their land and expand strategy. So a lot of this is almost like land grab, that once you're there, is if you can execute, and they've demonstrated that they have the team that can execute and bring in more and more and more of these franchise operators, that's the success of the operation. So yes, there are competitors. They happen to be more in a more, the larger money tends to be in a different segment of the market as far as we've been able to tell. So we think that that's, from what I've just said, really distinguishes them as an operation.
Lonnie, this is Matt. Oh, go ahead.
Matt,
Hey, this is Matt
you have a
Dayton.
question?
A quick question.
Oh, go.
I see that CII and DCD have notes out to them. Are they current on their payments to those two agencies?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
That was specifically asked and addressed.
Perfect. And one other, just kind of obviously sensitive to this always. Obviously, Butterfly is a relatively local company. Any relationships between people at the Green Bank and Butterfly, personally, professionally, that we should know about?
None.
Okay.
Well,
thank you.
Maybe one. So I'll abstain.
You mean at the board level?
Butterfly is my. But to be clear, I haven't participated in any of the discussions with Butterfly and the Green Bank.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that was news to me. Thanks, Matt, for that disclosure.
So I'll be abstaining.
This is Vinu Chandy. I'm going to be abstaining as well.
That's understood.
Folks, I just want to say I'm going to abstain as well, given my oversight over the conservation and load management plan and some of the programs we have that are comparable and that we're looking at launching that are comparable, perhaps. But I did want to flag that we just released our draft plan, and we're noticing a technical meeting on demand response and pay for performance approaches, and it might be good to coordinate and have you all appear and talk about this arrangement in that technical meeting.
I'll make a note of that.
Anybody else? Okay. I think we're ready to hear a motion to approve Resolution 6. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So
moved.
Oh, sorry. So moved. Adrian talking.
Adrian, oh, thank you. And second?
And Brenda will second.
Oh, thanks, Brenda. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. This is Tom Flynn.
Okay, so Tom's opposed as opposed to abstaining. All right, and Matt's abstaining, Vicky's abstaining, Banu's abstaining. Anybody else?
Lonnie, this is Matt Dayton. I'm also going to be nay, just on the concerns with the riskiness. So.
Okay, so Matthew Dayton is a no. Okay.
And just for everyone's edification, for a passing vote, it's when quorum is present, an affirmative vote of a majority of directors in attendance. So we need an affirmative vote of a majority of directors in attendance for the action to move forward.
Okay, and how's the count look?
I do not have that. Where's my favorite secretary, Matt Ranelli? What do we have again? Can we repeat the? I did not keep a count. Hold on. We might need to do that again.
Brian, while you're counting, is it in attendance and voting or in attendance?
I'll read it again. When a quorum is present, an affirmative vote of a majority of directors in attendance at a board or committee meeting shall be sufficient for action. So it looks to be an affirmative vote of majority of directors in attendance, not in attendance in voting.
Well, that would be a, well, I
Yeah,
don't know, but that seems to count the abstentions as no's.
yeah, which is odd. I've never really thought of that previously. We never dealt with that previously, but yeah, when a quorum is present, an affirmative vote of majority of directors in attendance at board or committee meetings shall be sufficient for action, comma, including the passage of any resolution, except as otherwise may be required by these bylaws or applicable law. Non-director members of any committee may participate, blah, blah, blah. That's basically saying.
So, Brian,
that
based
is kind of counterintuitive.
on my count, we have 11 members present. 5 are either no or abstaining, and 6 are yes.
Oh, solves the problem if that's the case.
If I could just read the yeses just to confirm, we've got Lonnie, John, Adrian, Brenda, Dominic, and Sarah.
And that is a very conservative approach. I mean, these bylaws and this enactment language was in place, I think, about 4 months before I came on board. It's a pretty conservative approach because typically you would do an affirmative vote. As Matt was saying, the more traditional approach is an affirmative vote of a majority of directors, attending and voting on such matter. So the abstentions don't count the way that was. So that's something maybe we'll probably revisit during our governance review on an annual basis.
Okay, moving on to our next discussion item, number 5, financing programs, updates and recommendations. I think Mackie Dykes.
Yes, good morning. This will actually just be an update, nothing to bring forward for approval today. So we'll be talking through where we stand at the end of the third quarter. This chart is actually slightly different from the same chart, or the chart that a similar chart you received in your board package. We noticed that 2 PPA projects were missing from those numbers. So this reflects 2 more closed commercial PPA projects than your board package. So I'll for right now skip over the commercial PPA and CPACE. We'll dig into those a little more in subsequent slides. So I'll focus your attention in the middle of the slide with SBEA. We are around between 80 and 90% towards our goal, which I think is right where you want to be, 3/4 of the way through the year. You'll recall with the Small Business Energy Advantage program, we purchase loans from Eversource on a typically a quarterly basis. So we have one more purchase this year scheduled. So with that, that should bring us to our goal. On the multifamily side, as you can see, our goals were not too lofty for this year, representing the shift in focus from a broader suite of projects just to the multifamily PPA, which is really sort of in the pause Director Hackett alluded to earlier. The affordable multifamily policy framework for solar is still in development. So these low multifamily goals really just represent closing out the existing pipeline. On the MFH, H&S, a lot of acronyms there, that's the multifamily health and safety loan. We do plan, we've got 2 loans at underwriting right now. We expect at least one of them to close, the other due to a complicated capital stack on the property might get delayed until next year, but we do feel good about getting at least one of those closed. And then on the term side, we did have a few more projects come in than we thought initially. One of those, actually, the largest one was the Cargill Falls project. That's which y'all might recall voting on earlier this year or late last year. We expanded our loan there, which was not anticipated when we set the goals. So that put us over there. Next slide. So we'll dig into our larger program, CPACE and PPA. So first on the CPACE side, so this goal you really want to think of, there's two aspects to it. The Green Bank is both the administrator, the statewide administrator of the CPACE program, as well as a lender in the program. So we have at this point, dozens of private capital providers who use CPACE as a lending platform, and we act in that administrator role to approve their projects. But there's none of our capital is involved, and we're not involved in their origination process really at all, except for that right at the end when we approve their package and make sure it meets the statute and the guidelines. So that goal you'll see here is the total third-party CPACE, which was 19 projects at 10.3 million. That right now is frankly somewhat underwhelming. I believe this represents the sort of the transition of the third-party market, as we've talked about in the past, to a focus on CPACE new construction lending, where as opposed to in previous years where we saw just a steady churn of mid six-figure, low seven-figure retrofit deals, now we see much lumpier, very large new construction projects, but ones that have multi-year development timelines. And really we don't, given our role really is just the administrator that comes in at the end, we don't have a lot of insight or ability to affect those transactions aside from structuring a good program, which thanks to the approval last meeting, I think we've done. So we're a little behind there in talking with a few lenders. They do have a few large new construction projects that they do hope to close this year. So we could, while not meeting the project goal, we could easily, with one or two of those closing, reach the capital deployed goal. On the Green Bank side, so this is the first two lines you see here. These are projects where we are actually the lender, where the Green Bank team is going out and working directly with building owners and contractors to scope and fund the project. So this is where we are firmly in the driver's seat. And our ideal or goal here is really to try to fill the gap that those private lenders are not or the gap that they're creating, which is really a lot of small to mid-size retrofit projects. So as you'll see, the project goal we're slightly under. We've done 4 projects, 3.6 million. I'm sorry, 3.6. I'm sorry, I was focused on this. So you want to add that we have the Green Bank, just regular CPACE debt, and then we also have PACE-backed PPAs. So when you add those together, we've done 5 of our 14 projects, and we're at 4.1 million of our nearly $5 million goal. We do have a pipeline of about 4 or 5 projects that are on track to close in the next 3 to 6 months. So given that, we would anticipate just reaching the capital deployed goal, which again, I think, given the Green Bank sustainability goals, that's the important one here. So I think we'll be under on the project goal, but due to these projects being slightly larger than our average and expectations, we'll be close to that capital deployed goal. Next slide. And then on the PPA side, at this point we are way behind, but that's, I won't say by design, but that's really just how, given where most of our projects fall, that's just sort of how it works. So at this point we've closed 8 projects for 2.2 million. But really the majority of our goal is made up of projects from two channels, which we affectionately refer to as SAP and MAP. You've probably heard us talk about our Solar MAP program, Solar Municipal Assistance Program. We also do a lot of work with the state, which we like to call our Solar State Assistance Program, so SAP and MAP. And due to the development timeline of these projects, which is at least a year from sort of customer acquisition, project development, getting the incentives, running the RFPs, and then contracting, these projects all sort of come in right at the end of the year. So we are actively working on our second SAP and MAP portfolios. The state actually earlier this week just formally signed off. We gave them 3 options for a suite of projects for the second portfolio. They choose the larger one, which was nice actually. So for our state goal will be when everything closes, will be slightly higher than we thought. So that's 12 projects for almost 10 megawatts at just over 20 million. And then on the municipal side, through the MAP program, we're actually in the process of executing those contracts now. A few have closed in the last week, so you don't see those reflected here because those are this is into the end of third quarter. But we have 11 projects for almost 2 megawatts at 3.1 million. So when you put all this pipeline, which we expect to close, when you combine that with the closed projects, you'll see that we are, aside from the project goal, we expect to be over our capital deployed goal and our capacity deployed. So, overall, I think we're in a good position. Especially especially the PPA goal does look, our progress is not good right now. Really just due to the timing of these projects. I think we're in a strong place to close out the year. So I'll pause there for any questions or comments.
Any questions? And let me just say, it's Lonnie, we have one more vote, just one more vote. And I know a lot of people are needing to bail pretty soon. So I'm just hoping you can hold on until we get through that. Questions or comments? Okay. Moving on to, so there's a, Eric, I think, is evaluation, measurement, and verification for energy storage solutions guidehouse. Oh, the guidehouse. Yes. Eric, are you speaking about that?
I will speak about that. Thank you.
Okay.
So as everybody is aware, our energy storage solutions program has launched, and what you may not be aware of is we have some deliverables for Pura coming up at the end of the summer, and we need to get our EM&V partner in place. The EM&V partner is something that Pura set out in the original order, somebody to verify the impact of the program to make sure that we're hitting targets and delivering to ratepayers as intended. The Green Bank jointly owns the EM&V for the Energy Storage Solutions Program with our co-administrators, Eversource and United Illuminating. The 3 of us issued a competitive RFP to all of our qualified EM&V partners. So we maintain a list, as did the utilities. We also reached out to the Energy Efficiency Board's list of contractors as well as DEEP's. So we engaged 64 EM&V partners. We had 4 responses. We sought input from Office of Consumer Counsel as well as DEEP, and ultimately we selected Guidehouse. Guidehouse is well established in the space. They've been a long-term partner with the Green Bank, particularly a technical resource around storage. I call out this 5% point because in the Pura order, it said that EM&V costs should not exceed 5% of the total program cost. The estimated cost for the first 3-year cycle is $77.7 million. So that has an upper limit of the cost for EM&V at about $4 million. The Guidehouse proposal is $873,000 for the first 3 years. We're asking for the authority to go up to $1 million because we do seek extra technical support beyond this proposal. So there are other tasks that have been assigned to us by Pura, such as emissions, or optimizing the program structure to reduce emissions, refining of the program rules, other things that will certainly come up. So this is meant to be a little bit of a buffer on that. Typically at this point in the year, if we had a large PSA, we would work with the chair, work with the B&O committee, but we're coming to the full board on this because this is a multi-year contract. This is making the commitment to do this over the 3 years. And just so that, just as a reminder for the board, all of the costs for energy storage solutions, including these EM&V costs, will be cost recovered through PURA and the utilities. Any questions on this?
Okay, hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve resolution number 7?
So moved. It's Vicky.
Oh, thanks, Vicky. Do we hear a second?
Second, John Harity.
Thank you, John. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, it's approved. Thank you. Okay, the next item. Do we hear from Sergio yet?
Yeah, that's gonna be me.
Oh, goody, goody. Okay, Sergio, I want to hear what's going on in the storage and all the things you're working on.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. This is Sergio Carrillo, Director of Incentive Programs. So let's provide a quick update on the progress to targets for incentives. So on RCIP and RCIP-E, I want to start with the last column, the capacity. The target was 16.8 megawatts. That was the remaining capacity in step 17. And we closed as of December 30th, which was the last day we approved an application. We closed 15.8 megawatts. That's 94% of the target. The number of projects and capacity deployed is basically a function of the capacity, and they're all at 94%. Just to me, it was a great accomplishment. That's on the RCIP and RCP front. From a SMART-E perspective, you can see the number of projects, 644 against 800. We are at 81% progress. On capital deployed is 10 million versus 11.2. We're 90%. We are confident we're going to be able to hit these targets at the end of the fiscal year, particularly because of strong growth on the HVAC front, mainly air source heat pumps. So we shouldn't have any problems hitting these targets. On the capacity, that's a different story. That's mainly solar projects. And with RCIP being done, this is going to be very challenging. I don't see us getting to the 0.8% on the capacity side. And there might be a couple other reasons. One being the amount of competing financial instruments available in the market that might be offering a better alternative than a SMART-E. So this is going to be quite a challenge. On the Solar for All or Deposigen, you can see we blew all the numbers out of the water with 300, north of 300% of the targets. Very solid performance. Is there any questions related to the targets, progress to targets? All right. And now we want to talk about, I want to provide quick updates on 3 projects. Basically, the RCIP closeout, battery storage, and the revenue grade meter replacements. And this one is related to the RCIP closeout. I am glad to report that we completed 350 megawatts of projects in RCIP. RCIP was completed. And that just yesterday, we received the last approval for REG Class 1 certification from Pura for what was left in Tranche 6. So now we have REG Class 1 certifications for the entire 350 megawatts of RCIP, which is fantastic news. From an RCIP-E perspective, remember there was a 32 megawatt of available capacity. We approved at the end of December 30.9 megawatts. Of those 30.9 megawatts, we have 24.8 megawatts completed. That is 80% of the approved capacity. And we are ready to file with Pura 22.9 megawatts of those 24.8 projects, meaning 90% of the 24.8 megawatts for REG Class 1 certification. We will be creating, I don't think we have time to create 2021 vintage REGs with these 22.9 megawatts of capacity, but it will have to be 2022 vintage. There is still 6.1 megawatts of approved projects that will have to complete. I would expect these to drag for a few months given some market conditions that I will talk about later on. Shortages in equipment, basically, but I'll talk about that later. Next slide, please. This is a representation of the SHREGs and REGs creation. As you know, prior to the SHREG creation in 2015, what I'm calling pre-SHREG REGs, we had created 48.8 megawatts of REGs at various prices. We sell these on the spot market through bilateral agreements. There are different prices. In 2015, we started creating SHREGs, and we created 6 tranches. Tranche 6, I just mentioned that we received REG Class 1 certification for the 31.6 megawatts. We're going to be able to create with Tranche 6 around 34,000 REGs a year. This is estimated year 1 production. Given that with system degradation and some other factors that create that number of REGs is expected to go down in time. And then in blue, I'm representing the RCP, what I'm calling post-REG REGs. As I said, 22.9 megawatts, they're ready to go to Pura. And then there will be a remaining 8 megawatts altogether in RCP. We will be able to create north of 33,000 REGs. As you recall, we entered into, about a year ago, we entered into an agreement with Exelon to sell these REGs, 15,000 in the first year, and we're going to be able to have roughly 25,000 REGs available. And in years 2 and 3 of that agreement, we have like 35,000 REGs, and we're going to be able to create roughly 33,000. So we will be in great shape to meet those commitments with Exelon. Next slide, please. And this is just a representation of the number of projects and the capacity that we were able to deploy by step in RCIP. There were 15 steps in RCIP. RCIP was designed as a declining block structure, meaning every step, the incentives would go down. And then RCP step 16 and 17, that's the capacity we will deploy. Total of 46,705 projects for 380.9 megawatts of capacity. Just fantastic accomplishments. Is there any questions related to to that. All right, let's talk about battery storage, a quick update and a quick follow-up to our March meeting. On the residential side, we have received 73 applications totaling 668.2 kilowatts, which is roughly 7% of the 10 megawatt block, first block on the residential side. Plenty of capacity available, as Bert was mentioning. On the non-residential side, it's a different story. We have received 56.1 megawatts. And as you can see, the battery capacity is totally depleted. We had 50 megawatts of capacity. And this is where I wanted to provide the update. I mentioned these last month, and there was I told them that we were going to go to Pura to talk about these and request guidance. So we had a meeting this past Monday. Brian Farnan, Sarah, Brian attended that meeting, and a couple other team members. So please chime in if you think it's appropriate. But the questions in the meeting, it was to understand the oversized systems, right? And the questions from Pura were directed at understanding the key drivers behind the decision to oversize these systems. We want to understand the value proposition to customers. Also, how much of a factor resiliency played in this decision to oversize the systems, which was very clear that resiliency was not necessarily the key driver in that decision. But anyways, we requested guidance from Pura. We told them guidance on how to proceed, moving forward. We are at capacity. What do we do? And we asked them if they decided to open the next 3-year block, the one that starts in January 2025, that we would be glad to put together a proposal to understand how much capacity should be available, at what incentive levels, what program design features should be changed from the current ones to make sure that we were, cost effectively and effectively deploying capital. As any Pura matters, this could be a 2-week thing or a 2-month, right? We don't know. There was no indication as to when they would be able to make a decision. So we are on a wait and see mode right now. Is there any questions about energy storage? And last, I wanted to provide a quick update on the revenue grade meter replacement, because there have been multiple recent developments. The table shows the replacement of the meters. As you remember, the roughly 5,000 meters that we had identified that needed to be replaced because they were going to be affected by the 3G shutdown, the 3G network shutdown. Of the 4,900 meters we have replaced so far, roughly 2,000. There are 3,000 to go, and these remaining 3,000, it's going to take us a few months to replace. A couple things that the 3G network shutdown is real. It took place at the end of February. We noticed in our monitoring platform that not only did these 5,000 meters fell off the radar, but many more, meaning that the 3G network is also affecting the TPOs. They haven't had time to replace all their meters. So there may be north of 10,000 meters right now that went off the radar. As I said, the industry in general is moving very slowly because of a nationwide shortage of meters. and also shortage of meter sockets. Meter sockets, the socket is the metallic box that houses the meters in your homes, and there are no more meters in the market. Pura, about a month ago, Pura asked the utilities to put together, to request a quote for 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 meter sockets, and that they approached the largest manufacturer of meter sockets in the country, that is called Durham Company. And this company basically said that they operate on a just-in-time methodology. They don't hold inventories. And they said they're right now scheduling ship dates in the fourth quarter of 2023. So this shortage is gonna last 12 to 18 months. It's our estimation. So the replacement, not only of our 3,000 remaining meters, but the ones that the TPOs need to replace is gonna take some time. It's the same reason it's gonna take the RC projects to complete, because there are no meter sockets in the market. The good news is that, as you recall, back in January, we received approval from NEPO GIS to utilize the Professor Ken Gillingham's methodology to estimate solar PV production for these 5,000 meters. And then about 3-4 weeks ago, we went back to NEPO GIS and asked them, hey, we are noticing the number of meters, right, that are being affected. It's not only 5,000, it's way more than that. Can we use the methodology that you approved back in January to estimate production for all these meters? And the response from NEPO GIS was yes. So it's great news for us. We are going to be able to estimate the solar PV production of all these meters. We're going to be able to create recs, transact on those recs with the EDCs, etc. So some good news. Any questions related to the revenue grade meter replacement? All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. Thanks a lot. Next agenda item, environmental infrastructure programs update. And I think Brian Garcia, you're going to do that?
Yes. So just really quick before we get to our LBNL colleagues who are on the line, just a quick update on where we are on environmental infrastructure. So Ashley Stewart and I are working away on our timeline, cranking through a lot of meetings with a lot of important stakeholders across environmental infrastructure. As you can see from this timeline, we're going to continue to engage stakeholders all the way through the end of the fiscal year, and I suppose we're going to continue to do that as we learn more and more things within the respective areas. We've got our strategic retreat next week. I'll talk about that real quickly. And our hope is that we'll be able to assemble all the pieces from the stakeholder engagement, the strategic retreat, and some of the information that we're putting together to assemble a draft comprehensive plan for you all to look at, comment on, and for us to revise and get that towards approval. I did leave within your packet an example for how we are summarizing the feedback from stakeholders. As you can see, for those of you who took a look at the land conservation document, it is a really comprehensive assessment of the policies, the market potential, the feedback from stakeholders in terms of thinking about what the Green Bank can do in environmental infrastructure. A lot of what we're trying to do is interpret it with a Green Bank lens. So that's always going to be a challenge for us to make sure that we're looking at everything from a financing lens. Here's just a quick breakdown of all the groups that we've been meeting with. It's been a lot of fun, lots of different interests, different missions, focusing in on different areas of environmental infrastructure. This is the methodical way that we've been working through this process. We're literally now in the end of our kind of water conversations and in the throes of waste and recycling. a week ago, last Monday, we were able to visit with Adrian at the Greater Bridgeport Community Enterprises and learn about mattress recycling, and then just the broader policy on extended producer responsibilities and the things that happen that have to enable recycling to happen. So really interesting market segment. And so as we've gone through each of these segments, we've really applied not only our equity lens, making sure that we're working towards our no less than 20% of investments and benefits inuring to vulnerable communities by 2025, but also applying our climate change lens, confronting climate change, which not only has to do with reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but also making ourselves more resilient to its impacts. So in all these conversations, we have these as matters of clear points that we're trying to understand from various stakeholders. Along the way, we discovered Quantified Ventures. What's really interesting about this group is they are really capable at helping us translate all this feedback into green bank speak. So they're really good. They're kind of like very similar to our culture, but they talk the language of financing. So we've brought them in to help us synthesize the report, as an example that we left in your materials, down into use cases that we might think about and consider. Now we've got our strategic retreat next week. Not all board members will be there, but for those of you who are, we're going to be at the Bacanico Center next Wednesday and Thursday. We've got Dr. Jonathan Rabb, who will lead facilitate, and Monica Eager, who's going to be the graphic facilitator. Lots of fun when you bring imagery into these sorts of conversations. We were very intentional about our participants, not only in terms of gender and people of color, but also ensuring that we have professional expertise across those different segments that I showed before, including people from the Federal Reserve Bank, Trust for Public Lands, American Farmlands Trust, and many others. So a really good, diverse, it's going to be a really interesting conversation. I'm positive. And the program over that day and a half is really exciting. We've got our various sessions that we're working through, from not only understanding our mission in the context for resilience in terms of helping us confront climate change, grappling with how we ensure equitable community participation in this, but then working through how we should be thinking about these segments and measuring success all along the way. We are going to be joined Wednesday evening by Professor Zoe Chance of the Yale School of Management, who wrote a book called Influence is Your Superpower. She's going to be kind of our really fun motivational speaker that evening. And I think by this point in the program, everyone's going to be really interested in learning what she has to say or hearing what she has to say. So if anyone has anything that you need who's heading up, just send a note to Cheryl or myself, and we'll get that taken care of. But look forward to seeing everybody next Wednesday. Happy to take any quick questions or comments before I do an introduction to the LBNL team. All right. All right. So thank you all for your patience here. So we, as a matter of our programs over the last several board meetings, have had the opportunity to learn about, listen to various speakers. And you might recall in January, we had Joel Reinbold talking about the hydrogen hubs. We had Mr. Edwards talk about the DOE loan program in March. And today, we're fortunate to have several speakers with us from the Lawrence Berkeley National Labs. I actually had the opportunity earlier this week, as I was in Berkeley for the Secretary of Energy's advisory board, to meet with Greg and Jeff. Over all these years, we've worked with them, but I've never met them in person. So it was really good to be able to sit down with them and learn more about their work. But Greg is the program manager in electricity markets and policy at LBNL. He conducts research and analysis of demand-side efficiency and coordinates technical assistance for the National Community Solar Partnership. Jeff is a program manager and energy efficiency team leader in the Electricity Markets and Policy Department at LBNL. His key areas of focus include financing of energy efficiency and distributed energy resources, electrification of buildings, and energy efficiency in housing markets. And we've got Sean Murphy, who's a senior scientific engineering associate in the same department as Greg and Jeff. But Sean's research focuses on utility administered energy efficiency programs and energy efficiency financing. I'll just warn you all, you are in Connecticut country, so this is all about University of Connecticut, not the University of California, but just want to welcome you guys and thank you for your willingness to present your research to our board. I think I'll turn it over to, I believe, Greg, you might kick us off.
Thanks so much, Brian. I appreciate it. Brian, how much time should we just go ahead and take what we were going to take?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Then. Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. We appreciate this chance to share our work with you all, and we also really admire the work that you all do, and we've really benefited from Brian's leadership on this project and others in his role as the co-chair of the State and Local Energy Efficiency Action Network. We also want to thank you all for making your data available. You made this study possible. For us to be able to produce the rigorous and impartial research that we do on the impact of clean energy financing, it's really important for us to have data. And for this project, we weren't able to get data from all the programs that we reached out to. So again, thank you very much. So I'm going to jump right in. If you go to the next slide, please. So first, I'm going to give an overview of the project and characterize the programs through some descriptive statistics. And then Sean Murphy, my colleague here, is going to discuss the loan performance. And after that, Jeff Deason's going to discuss how that performance compares to other loan products. And we will take questions at the end if we've got some time. So next slide, please. So to date, there's been no comprehensive loan level analyses of the financial performance of efficiency loan program portfolios. But given that there's now this robust track record that's available because we have a lot of large programs that have been going for 10 years and more, we wanted to make that available in order to increase investor confidence in efficiency loans and increase availability of capital at better terms for efficiency financing. And we've received a lot of interest in this work. Next slide, please. So these are the 4 portfolios that are included in the analysis. As I mentioned, your all's Smarty loan program is one of them. And note that the data for Smarty is from loans between 2013 and the very beginning of 2020, but also included our Pennsylvania's Keystone Help, Michigan Saves, and NYSERDA's on and off bill loan programs. So the analysis only includes loans for energy efficiency, and in total we have over 52,000 energy efficiency only loans. So these no solar loans are included in this analysis. Next slide, please. All right, so so that you have a sense of what these portfolios look like, I'm now going to quickly go over some of the descriptive statistics for the portfolios, starting with the loan characteristics. Next one after this, please. So let's see, this is the program, the principal amounts. You see that it concentrates in the $5,000 to $10,000 range, talking about all of them, with an average of $9,000 and a median of $7,600. And just by the way, in all of these charts, Connecticut's the Smarty is the blue, is going to be blue. So next slide, please. Then the loan terms, of course, are dependent on the program rules. And just so you know, there's not a lot of variability within these bins, but mostly the loans are taken out for 10 years, although the NYSERDA program's an outlier. Most of those are for 15-year. Those are 15-year loans. All right, so next slide, please. All right, so this is then the interest rates. These are also dependent on the program, and they of course can change over time, and there's some special offers as well. For example, all the way to the left, you see UL, the blue bar there, did a lot of volume at a concessional interest rate. But the rates range from 0% to almost 9%, with an average and median interest rate of 5%. Next slide, please. All right, and so the principal amount, the term, and the interest rate, of course, determines the monthly payments. And we see that the average here is $93 a month, and the median is $80. So that gives you a sense of what the ongoing obligation looks like from the borrower's perspective. Next slide, and I will use that as a segue into the borrower characteristics. We've got two. So first is income. Now, all of the programs, not all of the programs rather, had household income data that they could give us, but we were able to use location information to make an apples to apples comparison for 3 of the programs that did have sufficient data for that. So the bins here on the bottom represent the average income in the census tract where the project is located compared to the area median income, or the AMI. And this is not, again, not the income of the participant, but we do believe this is a good proxy. And as you see, the average tract income is 91% of the AMI, and across the programs, the majority of borrowers are from census tracts with median incomes that are less than the median income of their statistical area. Next slide, please. And so finally, the credit scores. You'll note that they're on the higher end as compared to the incomes. So the incomes you saw had like a normal bell-shaped curve, and these are skewed to the right. These are reasonably high credit scores with both average and median incomes or credit scores well above 700. So next slide, please. And you know, that should give you an idea of what's in these loan portfolios and what they look like. And so now for how they perform, I'm going to turn it over to Sean Murphy. Sean.
All right, thank you, Greg, and good morning, everybody. All right, so can you move to the next slide, please? So I'll be talking about, now that we've established some of the characteristics of the loans and the borrowers, I'm going to take you through an analysis of the financial performance of these loans. Throughout this section, we're going to use 2 metrics to describe the loan performance, delinquency, and loss rate. And I first just want to touch on a couple of things about the metrics. We received a snapshot of loan performance for these loans, not a time series of performance. So when we refer to delinquency, we're talking about loans that were 30 to 120 days delinquent at the date that each data set was created. That means we include any loan that is more than 120 days delinquent as a loss, along with loans that the portfolios reported as charged off. So this figure shows that the share of the outstanding balance in each portfolio that was between 30 and 120 days delinquent as the date each data set was received. What we see here is that the delinquency rates do vary somewhat across the programs, but they're all between 0.5% and 2.5%. And when we pool all 4 portfolios together, the overall delinquency rate is about 1.6%, which we have in that red bar on the right side of the figure. Next slide, please. So next we show the cumulative gross loss rates by portfolio and pooled across all portfolios, again in red. And I just want to note that the loss curves don't actually reflect individual vintages. We've aligned all the loans as if they started in year 0. So for each seasoning, we include only the loans that have seasoned at least that many years, regardless of which calendar year they operated in. We find that the loss rates across the portfolios, in particular, the curves are somewhat concave, suggesting that the rates in the early years following issuance, and then they taper off in later years. We will put these losses in context of other loan products later. Before we do that, I just want to break down the performance of these loans by borrower characteristics. Next slide, please. So earlier, Greg gave us a sense of the credit scores of the participating borrowers. And this slide shows the delinquency rates across the pooled portfolios broken down by borrower credit score. We order the credit score bins by lowest to highest, moving from left to right. The overall delinquency rate, again in red. The overall rate here is the same across the figures. We've seen about 1.6%. This figure shows that as the delinquency rates decline pretty sharply as the credit score rises. Almost 6% of the outstanding balance is delinquent for borrowers with credit scores below 600. And at the other end of the credit bins, only about 0.5% of the outstanding balance is delinquent for borrowers with credit scores above 780. That's a factor of 12 difference, which captures an overall trend here, which is there's a very strong relationship between credit score and delinquency in these programs. Next slide, please. So now take a look at the relationship between income and delinquency rates. Since we don't have household income for all of our programs, we use a place-based income metric. That's the ratio of the median income of the borrower census tract to the area median income, which we group into bands and refer to as the AMI band. While this is somewhat coarse measurement, we do see a relationship here between AMI band and delinquency rates. So for projects in census tracts with higher incomes, we generally find slightly lower delinquency rates. As the figure shows, as the delinquency rate declines from low AMI bands on the left to high bands on the right, but we just see this relationship is just not as strong as the relationship between credit and delinquency, just not as stark a decline as we move across the bands. Next slide, please. So now we're going to take a look at how cumulative losses are related to credit and income. Here we have cumulative gross loss rate by credit score bin. We see sort of the same pattern we saw with delinquency. As the credit score bin increases, the loss rates decline. Lowest credit borrowers, who are represented by the yellow curve, have the highest loss rates in all seasoning lengths, and the highest credit borrowers, who are represented by the green curve, have the lowest in all the different seasoning lengths. Just overall underscoring this point of this strong credit being a strong indicator throughout these program performances. Next slide, please. So this figure shows gross loss curves, but now by our income metric, the AMI band. Again, we see that the lowest income borrowers, represented by the yellow curve, have the highest loss rates, and the highest income borrowers, represented by the green curve, have the lowest loss rates. But here, the trend is just not quite as strong as it is with credit. There's still a relationship between the AMI band and losses, but just not as strong a signal as we see with credit, which I think is just sort of the main theme throughout all of these results. Thus far, we've been breaking the data down one factor at a time, and I do want to touch upon our next slide, that we did a regression analysis that sought to separate out the impacts of these different drivers of performance. And basically what we found was that there was a statistically significant relationship between credit score and both delinquency and losses. And then there was somewhat, or not as strong a relationship between the AMI band and losses. And I think, again, the regression analysis sort of underscores the points that we were illustrating earlier throughout the figures of credit score being a very strong predictor of performance, and income somewhat less so, and sort of inconsistently across the credit score bands. And with that, I turn things over to Jeff.
Thanks, Sean. My camera is refusing to turn on, and I'm not sure why, but I'm just going to roll because I know you all are over time. So apologies that you can't see me. But I'm going to talk to you quickly about a comparison of these of loan performance with other products. Next slide, please. All right, so we're going to see some similar figures here, but this is simply a comparison of the 30 to 120-day delinquency rates we observe in our data with those same delinquency rates for some other products. And these are basically various indices of auto and consumer loan performance that we were able to access. I'm not going to tell you about all of the indices specifically in detail, but I do want to note, first of all, the main finding, which is that the efficiency loans actually at least slightly outperform all of the other auto or consumer loan indices that we look at. Probably maybe a couple that I'll focus on is that our efficiency loan delinquency, which is again 1.6%, is quite similar to but slightly lower than delinquency rates from prime auto loans, which are the third series from the left, or the second blue series from the left. And they're also comparable to but slightly lower delinquency than unsecured personal loans made by brick and mortar institutions, which are the second and fourth series from the left, or the first and third blue series from the left. And I do want to point out that there are some other differences between the products that we compare to and our energy efficiency loans. It's not just that the difference is that our loans are for efficiency measures that return value to sort of direct financial value to the borrower. There's also some other difference. Obviously, auto loans are secured by the vehicles, which is a strong incentive to repay, and we don't rip insulation out of people's walls if they don't pay an efficiency loan. So that's a pretty relevant difference. The unsecured personal loans are not secured, obviously, also have somewhat smaller sizes, but they do have some higher interest rates and generally are shorter loan term than our efficiency loans. So there are multiple differences here, but still this puts the results into context a bit. And the efficiency loans perform quite well. That's in delinquency terms. Let's go to the next slide, which discusses losses. And here we see a pretty similar story. Now, we were only able to draw loss curves, to find data to draw loss curves for a couple of comparator products. These are both courtesy of KBRA's auto loan and consumer loan indices. And the auto loans you can see here, so the auto loans are blue, our efficiency loans are red, and then these consumer loans are gray. And you see quite similar performance actually between our efficiency loans and the auto loans in terms of loss curve over time. The tier 1 consumer loans perform quite a bit worse, as you can see here, the unsecured consumer loans from KBRA. I do want to flag that those tier 1 consumer loans are fintech loans. Those are online loans that in general do perform a bit worse than brick and mortar loans. And of course, our efficiency loans are brick and mortar loans. So if you drew that curve for unsecured personal loans from brick and mortar institutions, you might expect it to be a bit lower. All the same, one of the takeaways here is that we see really similar performance with our loans and prime auto loans, which again are secured by the vehicles. Next slide, please. And very quickly, this is a comparison of annualized loss rates to some annualized loss rates that we were able to source. We were able to find a few more of these. We couldn't draw a curve, but we could basically get an annualized number. And again, our loans do very, very well compared to some of the comparators. And I do want to point out that on all of these comparisons, our loss comparisons, our loss rates are gross. We did not have any information or data on recoveries after a loss was declared. Everything we're comparing to is a net loss rate. So in fact, we're sort of disadvantaging our comparison a bit, and we're still doing quite well. All right, so 2 more slides to wrap up. Thanks for your patience and for staying over time. So here's the high level conclusions, which we've already mentioned. Basically, our borrowers are high credit, but they're middle income. You may recall that the average borrower was in the 80 to 100% AMI band, which maybe makes sense for folks that are showing up for a financing program, folks that actually need the capital. And then we've shown you that our efficiency, delinquency, and loss rates are low. They're low, in particularly pooled across our programs. The loans outperform their most logical comparators that we were able to find. And finally, a few high-level implications. Next slide. Thank you. So, we hope we've shown that there's a bit of an opportunity here for capital providers to lend at low risk while creating an efficient building stock in the process. It is possible. We don't know what the expectations of lenders might be for the performance of these loans necessarily, but if they, for example, expect them to perform like unsecured personal loans, they do a little better than that. And so it's possible that capital for efficiency lending is currently overpriced because expectations might have not be correct. And then we have shown that, an implication of the curves that Sean showed was that high credit households in lower income areas can be expected to repay loans at a strong rate. And these households do exist, by the way. We go into this in the report, but the correlation between credit score and income in our data is not very strong. And there are plenty of high credit, lower income, but higher credit borrowers who you could expect to perform on these loans. And then finally, we can see some extensions of this work into some of the differences we've shown you in borrower performance might be able to be used to sort of size loss expectations and things as we design mechanisms and programs to perhaps push into lower credit or lower income or generally consider, folks that may be underserved or might be viewed as higher risk. And with that, I will close. We are happy to take any questions. Again, we know you're over time, and we really appreciate you all sticking around to hear us talk about this. And again, thanks to the Connecticut Green Bank, one of the key providers of data for this project.
Great. So before we turn it to questions, just a quick comment. I wanted to thank Greg, Jeff, and Sean, the LBNL team here for this great work. Johanna Zetterberg, the State Energy Efficiency Action Network, just good stuff. And thank you for being up so early to be with us here on the East Coast and sharing this important research. The second thing I wanted to do is to thank Deep We took $8.25 million of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act funds and put them towards residential financing programs. And over the years that we've utilized those funds initially as loan loss reserves, but as you see here, knock on wood, these loans tend to pay. We shifted them to be catalysts in markets and used them as interest rate buy down. So we turned that $8.25 million into $175 million of investment into a residential clean energy programs across the state. So just really, really good way to leverage and mobilize private investment. And then lastly, just hearing some of the priorities from Secretary Granholm of ensuring that the DOE is supporting efforts at the local and state level, specifically trying to enable more private investment in vulnerable communities, low to moderate income communities, communities of color. One of the things that we're all trying to think about is what's the role of the federal government in terms of helping enable more of this type of activity at the state and local level. We use those ARA funds to effectively achieved a multiplier of nearly 20 to 1. So how can we continue to do that to achieve the aggressive federal targets that really match up to our state targets here in Connecticut? But questions, comments from members of the board or the Green Bank team?
Hey, Brian, if I could just chime in. I just wanted to say, first of all, thanks to the LBNL team for their great work here. This is just a fantastic study. What I'm really struck by is how amazing, it's amazing how close this longitudinal analysis of credit performance came close to what we were expecting in terms of delinquency performance and loss performance. And our theory was that it would perform very well comparable to automobile loans. And in fact, that was our big pitch to the credit unions and community banks. And in fact, that turned out to be the exact case. We also suggested to them that these loans would perform far better because they are energy efficiency loans, much better than other general purpose unsecured loans, which you had the curves to actually demonstrate that as well. So as far as being overpriced, looking at, say, the price points for interest rates that are achieved in automobile loans, there's a considerable gap there between that. I would agree with you. The only thing I guess you have to say is that the securitization market really does kind of cleave to physical assets, right? Homes, automobiles, or in the fintech world, credit card receivables and such like that. So there's something to be said for standardization of these contracts and things of that sort. And maybe if we get to the point where we have standardization across a bigger population of credits, then maybe those interest rates could come down with the benefits of broad-based securitization. But thanks again to the LBNL team.
Yeah, thank you, Bert. It's always good to hear that expectations are converging, and that the data show what you expected them to show. I mean, I'm very interested in how your lenders receive, whether they believed you when you asserted this, and now I wonder if it'll feel any different to them if we can actually demonstrate to some extent that it's true, or whether they kind of accepted that that would be the likely performance.
Well, I think they believed us because we had those ARA funds.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, I agree. And one of that's actually perfectly matches one of the heuristics. I didn't actually use it in this presentation, but that the performance of these things looks more like prime auto than unsecured consumer lending, and that may be a useful heuristic. And you already used it years ago, so what do you need us for?
We needed you to prove it.
Yeah.
And we do want to get this out there so that your guesses are proven correct more broadly.
Yeah, one of the motivations here, right, and this is, I'm sure, something you have encountered and that we've heard from others, is just that when there's no data, people make very conservative assumptions. And so, part of the hope here is just reduce the uncertainty, give someone something to, anchor on. We know this is not going to close any particular deal, but maybe it's information where there was none before.
All right. Any final questions, comments for the LBNL team?
Just one comment from Adrian. Thank you for this great presentation. It kind of supports our rationale for assuming risk. And we had a big conversation about that this morning. And so I feel vindicated in my vote. Thank you for coming in.
Good point.
Thank you for having us.
And this is Lonnie, and thank you so much. I loved how good our Smarty loan looked in the compare and contrast. And I love the strong payback record. It's so important from the lower income communities, to take that argument off the table. That is really, really stellar and very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you, gang, LBNL team, for joining us.
Yep.
All right. I think we're good, Lonnie.
Okay. So do I hear a motion to adjourn? Everybody's already gone.
Yeah, so moved, John Harity.
I'll move it. I'll second it.
Thank you both. Okay, all in favor, I'm guessing yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Happy Earth Day and have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Take care, folks.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.
This conference will now be recorded.